I graduated high school in 1985. And so this is the early 1980s. There's no internet and no texting of your friends. There's no SSRI drugs. There's no Prozac or anything like that. And it was whatever, you know, book you could find at the bookstore or the library or whatever psychotherapist you might find in the yellow pages. And, teenage kid's not going to do any of those probably. And it was really, as we moved into the 1990s, that the kind of personal growth and self-help movement really sprung out because Tony Robbins was becoming very, very popular. And that allowed other people kind of to become, get their books out there. And I really got heavily involved in that area because I wanted to fix myself. I'd done some talk therapy and things. It just kind of meandered for me, and I thought, well, Tony Robbins seems very excitable and very happy, so maybe whatever he's doing. 90s, the SSRI drugs came out, and the conversation turned about depression. You can actually talk about it. It was on all the talk shows and the morning shows and radio talk shows. You could talk about it. You talk about it with your doctor, and you didn't have to hide it anymore. And so a lot more information started coming out there. The conversation widened. And one of the things that, even like Tony Robbins and some other people in the personal growth world were talking about, and as the internet comes out in the 90s, uh, one of the things that people were mentioning that could be very helpful in turning around thought patterns and behavior patterns was hypnotherapy, using the
If you have ever looked around at your life and thought, this can't be it, you are in the right place. This is Flying Upstream, the podcast for people who refuse to live on autopilot. I'm your host, Kristyn Medeiros. Each week, I sit down with people who questioned the rules, challenged the expectations, and chose a different path. Not because it was easy, but because it was honest. We talk about the moments that broke them open, the decisions that scared them, and the lives they built when they stopped doing what they were told and started listening to themselves. If you are done following the crowd and ready to trust your own way forward, stay with me. Let's fly upstream. Hey, free spirits, welcome back to Flying Upstream podcast, where we explore people who dream and have chosen to live differently and challenge the paths. Today, I'm talking with Craig Meriwether, a certified clinical hypnotherapist who helps people heal anxiety, trauma, and deep subconscious patterns. Craig's journey into his work began with his own struggles with depression and anxiety, which led him to explore the power of the subconscious mind and ultimately dedicate his life to helping others access their own inner healing. Craig, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Oh, thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate it. We just got together about a week ago to organize this, so I'm glad we made the time work. I'm looking forward to
Yes.
it.
I'm so excited. Let's go right way back to the beginning. What was life like growing up when you were dealing with depression and anxiety? What was that period of time for you?
Well, this is my teenage years of issues in life, of family and things. A lot of anxiety and depression I was struggling with. I graduated high school in 1985. And so this is the early 1980s. There's no internet and no texting of your friends. There's no SSRI drugs. There's no Prozac or anything like that. And it was whatever, you know, book you could find at the bookstore or the library or whatever psychotherapist you might find in the yellow pages. And, teenage kid's not going to do any of those probably. And it was really, as we moved into the 1990s, that the kind of personal growth and self-help movement really sprung out because Tony Robbins was becoming very, very popular. And that allowed other people kind of to become, get their books out there. And I really got heavily involved in that area because I wanted to fix myself. I'd done some talk therapy and things. It just kind of meandered for me, and I thought, well, Tony Robbins seems very excitable and very happy, so maybe whatever he's doing could help me. And then in the later 1990s, the SSRI drugs came out, and the conversation turned about depression. You can actually talk about it. It was on all the talk shows and the morning shows and radio talk shows. You could talk about it. You talk about it with your doctor, and you didn't have to hide it anymore. And so a lot more information started coming out there. The conversation widened. And one of the things that, even like Tony Robbins and some other people in the personal growth world were talking about. And as the internet comes out in the 90s, uh, one of the things that people were mentioning that could be very helpful in turning around thought patterns and behavior patterns was hypnotherapy, using the power of your own subconscious mind to create healing. And so it was just something I started using in the early 2000s. And so this is kind of a slow drip, as you imagine, from early 80s. I mean, we're talking 20 years of trying to find ways out of this. And it
Yeah.
was really hypnotherapy that really gave me the biggest boost of repatterning and kind of rewiring, if you will, my brain for new instructions and
Yeah.
new computer code, I guess maybe you could say.
Before we get
And
into the hypnotherapy, I'm curious to know what helped you make that shift? What was a moment or a time for you when, maybe you were in your 20s and you had to make that decision to really try to understand and heal what you were experiencing? Was there something that triggered that shift for you?
it wasn't the bolt of lightning or the big trumpet blast or anything. It was just I don't like feeling like this.
That's fair.
It's just awful.
Yeah.
I'm like feeling depressed and anxious all the time. And so it was just trying to solve an issue, and talk therapy kind of didn't really help very much for me. And talk therapy can be very helpful, very useful, very healing. But in terms if you don't really know what the issue is, the core issue is, then resolution can't happen.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about, moving into, in and of itself, even the kind of personal growth stuff, is like I was doing it, but it wasn't resolving the core issues I was dealing with because they're kind of behind that veil of the subconscious mind. If it's unconscious in the unconscious mind, then how would you know it's there other than the warning signals of anxiety or anger or overwhelm
Right.
that the body is giving you that there's something wrong, that there's danger somewhere?
Yeah. And certainly back in the 80s and 90s and still today, we are taught to just push down those feelings. We're taught to
Yeah.
say, ignore your instincts, ignore what feels right on the inside, and just really go with making other people happy, make your parents happy, do what they tell you, be a good girl, be a good boy, just kind of in that mentality. And it's really hard to break out of that. It's
Yeah.
hard to kind of say, like, wait, actually, what I think is more important than what my parents or family or society thinks. It's hard to break out of that mold. Is that what you found too?
Yeah, and it was just more of lack of information and unable to understand what was happening. Because after a while, it's just like, well, I guess this is just how it's going to be, or this is how people feel. And you see the people that are joyful, happy, and I guess, well, I guess that's just the way it is, or something's different about me, something wrong with me. And so, if you get that sense of, well, look at all these happy people having a good time and enjoying life, and I'm not doing that, or I don't feel that way, what is wrong with me? And so that becomes the big hunt, the big true crime special. So it's like, well, let's figure out what's happening here.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of personal growth is. Well, these people seem energized and happy and motivated. And so what are they doing? And to a certain extent, it's helpful to get you out of bed in the morning and moving towards, but it doesn't change that feeling state because those warning signals, those alarm systems haven't been turned on because the mind still thinks there's some sort of danger or issue, going on that may be threatening to you. Then the alarm says, sort of like the fire alarm going off in a building, smoke alarm going off in your kitchen. It's like, okay, I burned the toast. So what? It's just like you don't need to go on and on and on and on for weeks just because I burned the toast, for all of 30 seconds. It's not an emergency. But if your emergency signals are just keep turning on at a level 10, after a while, it's just, it gets so exhausting. It's like, well, what can I do to fix this?
Right.
And it was really just, one of the things that people kept talking about is hypnotherapy because, they'd write a book and there'd be, here's the four things or, five things you can do to change your life. And four of them would always be different, but the fifth one was always hypnotherapy. Like, oh, and hypnotherapy is great because it help you access the subconscious mind. and create change within behaviors and thought patterns and heal, old emotional wounds that you may not even know you have. And so it was just, okay, that seems to fit every, check every one of the boxes.
I mean, it seems a little too good to be true, right? It just seems like this
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
powerful fix
Well,
all
and
cure.
yeah, well, and what it is, it's not so much that hypnotherapy fixes you, or that a hypnotherapist like myself fixes you. I don't fix anyone. Hypnotherapy in of itself doesn't fix anyone. Hypnotherapy is just an umbrella term for a bunch of different techniques and tools you can use. You fix yourself. That's why it's so powerful. You don't have to look outside of yourself to fix. Just like your subconscious mind, if there's a cut on your finger, it knows what to do to fix that. If there's a scrape on your knee, it knows what to do to fix that. If someone has a cut on their finger, it doesn't send all that emergency aid to the wrong finger. If you have a cut on the index finger of your left hand, it doesn't send it all to the pinky finger of your right hand.
Well, I really love that you're bringing this up because there are so many myths around hypnosis.
Yeah.
And some people imagine stage shows or mind control. What are
Yeah.
some of the biggest misconceptions that you encounter?
Well, and that's I think you just mentioned the two biggest ones is that the whole mind control, brainwashing thing, which is really unfortunate, because I think it keeps people from wanting to even investigate the potential of these techniques. It all comes from movies and TV shows, and they're just using it to move plot point forward, having it Jason Bourne to assassinate the prime minister. It's like, well,
Right.
now we'll hypnotize and we'll just move on. But I can't make anybody do anything they don't want to do. That's why smoking cessation is something that hypnotherapy is probably most famous for, helping people to quit smoking. That's not 100% guarantee because if that person doesn't want to quit smoking, they won't quit smoking. I can't make people do anything they want. Otherwise I could go into prisons and hypnotize everybody to be law-abiding, upstanding citizens, and I'd shut down the prison system. I could hypnotize my way into the United Nations right now and hypnotize all the world leaders to create world peace, and I'd be that guy who ended war, uh, but I can't do that because people have certain agendas they want in life, and maybe, their wife or their husband say, "Okay, I'm tired of you smoking, the health issues, the money issues, the smell of it all. I want you to stop smoking. I've made an appointment for you with a hypnotherapist." They don't wanna quit smoking, they're not gonna quit smoking. And so it's that thing, if I can't just go up to somebody in the street, you see videos on this on YouTube. They just walk up to, apparently some random person asleep, and they just kinda keel over. It's like, that was rehearsed. That was a setup. That's a little skit they're doing to try to get views
Mm,
and go viral. You can't make I don't dare anybody to do it because I don't want you to do it, but, think of what would happen if you just walked up to a stranger and just like, "Sleep!" You're gonna get punched in the face, and that person would turn around and run away.
right, right.
That's not a thing. And even the shows, like the hypnotist shows in Las Vegas or comedy clubs, whatever, everybody that gets up on that stage volunteered to get up there. And even when the hypnotist comes out, who are they picking? Are they picking the introvert in the back of the room, hiding in the shadows, sinking down in their chair, just almost like, "Oh, I hope they don't see me," or are they picking the extrovert who's jumping up and down, waving their arms, saying,
Right.
"Pick me, pick me." They got there early to sit in the front row so they could be one of the people on stage. One of those two people is going to give a better show because they want to be up on stage.
Right.
And even if you watch those shows at the very beginning, he'll do the hypnotist, and he or she will do some sort of kind of test or introductory trance state thing. And what they're looking for is making sure people can actually do it. Because now you're up in front of people. People get stage fright. And they don't have the time to like help somebody relax and they gotta go, go, go. There's a show. People paid good money to be at the show. And if somebody is nervous and anxious, they're looking for like little clues like the facial muscles kind of slacking and the eyeballs maybe darting around and maybe picking up their arm and dropping it and seeing if they're in a trance state. If they can't do that, they're going to be excused from the stage. And you see this in some of the videos of people and of their shows. And then what they have left is people who are so excited to be up there that they're willing to move themselves into this trancy, altered state of consciousness, dance like Michael Jackson and sing like Elvis Presley and have a fun show because they want to be part of the show. They want to be star of the show.
I really appreciate you talking about that you can't make people do this because you've mentioned already a couple times the subconscious mind and that's what really drives our behavior.
Right.
What role does the subconscious actually play when we're talking about anxiety, fear, or even self-sabotage?
Yeah, it plays everything because the subconscious mind's main job is to keep you protected and safe. And so, yes, the subconscious mind is running your digestive system and your immune system and being your heart. And if you get a cut on your finger, it's fixing that and all that kind of stuff, growing your hair, taking a 1 day old baby to that of an adult. All these things we don't have to think about. It's also holding on to those habits that we have, like tying our shoes and walking down the street and zipping up a jacket and all that kind of stuff. We don't have to think about that stuff, riding a bicycle. We don't have to think about that. That's all stored within the subconscious mind, but its main job is to keep you safe and protected. And it does this by holding on to old hurt and pain, like files in a filing cabinet. And not to make your life miserable. It's not its job. Your body's not against you. Your mind is not against you. There may be some hiccups. There may be some stress and some strain, but your subconscious mind is not against you. It just thinks it's protecting you, but it may be using out of date instructions and safety protocols, maybe set up by a child.
That
And
makes
until you change those instructions, nothing else changes. And as you move through your day, all the information you bring in through your five senses, what you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, it gets filtered through that filing cabinet. And if any one of those files kind of registers or triggers the alarm system as being dangerous, or this sort of kind of looks like that old event that happened back in the sixth grade, or when you were 5 years old, or when you were a teenager, the alarm systems are going to go off. Now, instead
mm,
of somebody pulling the alarm, fire alarm in a building, and the sirens go off, the lights go off, we have a warning system, but instead of sirens and lights, we have feeling state. The feeling state of fear, the feeling state of anxiety, the feeling state of anger and overwhelm and worry. These are warnings to, from our body to get our attention that there's something dangerous in our world. Now, kind of one of the issues of being human, maybe not necessarily a problem, but an issue of being human is the mind can't tell the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And here's where it kind of gets a little, we can get a little tripped up is that, like, for example, a nightmare in the middle of the night, doesn't matter how realistic or how ridiculous a nightmare may be, it could be a veteran having a PTSD dream about the war, even though the war for them was 30 years ago, but they're having this dream about being back in combat on the front lines. Or maybe something super ridiculous, like a cheeseburger chasing you down the street, throwing coconuts at your head. No, neither one of those scenarios is happening. They're safe and sound in bed. But the mind thinks they're under attack and in danger and will turn on the stress response, even in deep sleep. If someone, listening has even had that experience, maybe recently or a long time ago, or they have kids who've had that experience, and they're tossing and turning in bed and their body sweating is trying to cool it down because their heart is racing, trying to get that adrenaline and cortisol. Their brain is creating into the big muscles of their arms to fight, the big muscles of their legs to escape. So much cortisol in the brain that they wake up with a scream looking around for the danger, all because of cheeseburgers chasing down the street. So you can imagine what's happening in your waking world.
right.
And the issue is that you're in charge of the filing cabinet and you are allowed to amend or edit or get rid of those files that may be causing that alarm system to sound off on high alert. And kind of the other issue of being human is what you practice, you get better at. And so if somebody's been in chronic stress and anxiety and fear for a long time, it's just like, well, it's not a head scratcher on why it's easy and fast to get into that state because you keep practicing it over and over again, like somebody, practicing the piano or the guitar or dance or martial arts or something. The more you practice, the better you get at it. But what's fascinating about this is like, well, now that you understand this, it's time to practice something else. And that's where hypnotherapy can be a great tool because these techniques of helping you with those files. Now, you don't have to go searching for files. You don't necessarily want to go search for trauma in your life. You want to start with the feeling state. That feeling state is being created by brain chemistry, and the brain chemistry is being changed, at least in this way, through a thought, maybe conscious, but maybe unconscious. But you know what the thought is because you're creating it. And so sometimes you just follow that feeling state back, follow the thread, the cord back through to the thought, even if it's an unconscious thought that created it. And that's the power of this work, is that we're focused on that subconscious part of mind. It's this very highly emotionalized part of mind that's trying to protect you and keep you safe. So that's the subconscious mind. The conscious mind, that's the logical mind, the analytical mind, the mind that's, sets up your goals and the plans to achieve those goals and the willpower for those goals and all that. But what neuroscience tells us is that conscious mind only makes up 5% of mind. Subconscious mind makes up 95% of mind. So whenever there's conflict between the logical mind and the emotional mind wins every time. That's why a lot of this stuff doesn't have to make any sense.
Yeah. Craig, I
Mm,
want to shift gears just for a minute here because I know
mm,
you also practice past life regression, which is a
mm,
topic that really
mm,
sparks curiosity.
yeah.
So I'm interested to know kind of what first led you to explore that. And then how do you approach conversations about consciousness being non local or about spiritual
Yeah.
experiences with clients who may be skeptical?
Yeah. Generally, when the conversation comes up, they already have an interest in the more spiritual side of life. That was one of the interests of my life. I grew up in the Episcopal Church, which is Catholicism light, if people aren't familiar with the Episcopal Church. But I also went to a Baptist high school, so religion was a big part of my growing up years from pretty much when a baby all the way up to graduating high school. And so the kind of two main focuses of my life were the more spiritual side of life and depression and anxiety. And one group of techniques and tools that help with both sides of the issues of life that I'm interested in was hypnotherapy. Because while nowadays, people go to Malibu and down to South America to do ayahuasca ceremonies and things like this, and access through maybe plant medicine or psychedelics or things like this. Uh, Back in the day, that was really, that wasn't something you could really do, or it was hard to get in touch with. And hypnotherapy is a way to use your own inner skills to access that information. And so hypnotherapy kind of scratched both those itches for me. And not to say that it was like all of a sudden I read a book about hypnotherapy and I trained to be this was a long, slow drip of my life from the 1980s to, probably like 35 years. And so in terms of that conversation, I mean, we could do a 10-hour podcast and still have more questions and answers in terms of spirituality and consciousness and I wrote a whole book somewhere around here, uh, past life past lives guidebook, and it's about the science and the history even of past life regression and reincarnation, where it comes from, because that interested me. I'm even looking at Neanderthal burial sites, and is there any indication they had some thoughts about life after death from how they buried their community or their tribe or their family? And so we started about 50,000 years ago and just kind of move forward, looking through all the different ways that uh, people around the world and throughout time also engage in reincarnation and past lives, as well as the science and what's going on in the brain in terms of a lot of the research coming out that the brain is not a warehouse, a storage unit, that warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark filled with memories. But the brain is more of an antenna pulling in information, just not unlike my phone here. I have access to all the information in the world, but it's not in my phone. I pull it into my phone through all the ways it does it with cell towers and servers and all that kind of stuff. And so, what research has been showing the last years, decades, is that the brain seems to be doing the same thing. That memory is not necessarily and consciousness is not held within the brain like in a shoebox, but that the brain is an antenna, like on the top of your house. We used to have for our TVs, or the rabbit ears on a TV, or the antenna on your car for your radio, and it's pulling in this information, and your brain's acting like a radio or a TV and giving you that information. What if you're holding on to it from some other part of a life you've lived? Like, this world is a classroom, and we keep returning again and again. It's like moving from the first grade to getting your master's degree at a university, and
Right.
each so and you just keep learning and growing and again, there's a lot of information. It's not like I'm just kind of making this up or channeling this information or anything like this. This is coming from research and lots of work people have been doing over the last 60, 70 years. And
Yeah.
so it's
It's
fascinating stuff.
it,
Again, we could probably talk for weeks and still have more questions than answers. Yeah.
absolutely. And it is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, especially because there is a connection between hypnotherapy and past lives, and it's all connected in one. So I do appreciate you sharing that so that we can kind of see the bigger picture, that these are not necessarily individual ways of healing or paths forward, but there is a larger connection.
Yeah.
And before we wrap up today, Craig, I do have a last question for you. If someone listening today is struggling with anxiety or feeling stuck in their patterns that they cannot seem to break, what's one message you would want them to hear?
The big message is there's nothing wrong with you. Your subconscious mind is there trying to protect you from something. You may not be consciously aware of it anymore. Maybe you know exactly what it is, but you have the ability to heal. And this isn't, this may sound a little harsh, and it's not meant to, just because of timing. Uh, I want to get this out, but this isn't meant to sound harsh. This isn't to blame you or say it's your fault, but you're the one who put all those files in the filing cabinet. Yes, maybe as a child through a traumatic series of events over years, even, and probably unconsciously, certainly you put those files in there. But it actually ends up becoming very empowering because if you're the one who put those files in there to create the computer code on how to keep you safe and protected and keep those alarms going off, warning you that there's danger in your life, if you're the one who did that, then you're the one who can undo it. And that's the power
That's a
of
great
this work.
point.
You have to look inside of yourself. Yes, if I get in a car accident, take me to the doctor. Don't take me to a hypnotherapist. You know, but
Yeah.
if there is issues in life that are triggering these warning signals, this fire alarm of anxiety or fear or anger or resentment or overwhelm or worry, your brain is doing that through chemistry and causing that feeling state in your body through the hormones of adrenaline and cortisol and neuropeptides and molecules of fear and anxiety. Again, that can only happen in that way through a thought, conscious or unconscious. You may know exactly what the anxiety is about. You may have no idea, but your subconscious mind does because it's creating that situation, scenario that the brain has to warn you through the feeling state in your body. So you know why you're doing it. And you're allowed to change it. You're allowed to change the programming. You're allowed to turn down the volume on the anxiety or the anger or even resolve it completely, whatever needs to happen. And that's why this is such powerful work because again, I'm not here to fix anybody. And hypnotherapy in and of itself doesn't fix anybody, just like a hammer or a screwdriver or a wrench doesn't build a deck or a gazebo or an addition on your house. You're going to do it using these tools, but you're going to fix it yourself. Because who better to know what the problem is than you? And actually, who better to know what to do about it than you?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Craig, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me today and sharing your story. I really appreciate the conversation because you did a great job highlighting how powerful the subconscious mind can be and how much of our behavior and emotional life can actually be shaped by patterns that we may not even realize are there. And hearing about your own journey from struggling with anxiety to now helping others access their own healing is incredibly powerful. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today. And thank you again, Craig, for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, take a moment to sit with it. You can find more episodes and resources at flyingupstreampodcast.com. And if this show speaks to you, the best way to support it is to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who is ready to question the path they are on. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and always keep flying upstream.